All right, everybody. Anthony Brogdon coming at you in my live format. And you know, it's funny, my friends, when I do it live, I gotta like really make sure I say the right thing. Because I know how sometimes, people say things, they're like, ooh, I wish I hadn't said that. And I can't take it back. But I've gotten pretty good at it. Now, let me tell you something, my friends. We're almost 4 years strong in this, going strong with strong inspirations, and I'm excited. This show has made me a better person. It has made me more knowledgeable of Black history and wellness. We talk about that. It has made me more understanding of other people and maybe giving me insight to when I am understanding of them, how they may think and react because of their background, let's say. Because I've had people on the show, not just black folk, but white folk and people from around the world. And many instances, if not all, what shapes us is our background. So I thank you for coming on the show, my viewers. We're gonna rock and roll. This gentleman that is on tonight, who would lead the discussion, is a profound expert and scholar and all them other big words that you can use to define someone who knows a lot about what they know. And in this instance, not only in this instance, he knows it because he lived it. And I'm only able to give you that because he and I have spoken before. And I did some little vetting. There are people who always have seen this video and told me, man, that guy is the real deal. And so it is. And it's because, and I'm going to go right into him after I say this, and this is what I want you to get out of this, viewers. You get a passion, go for it. That's what he did. And so, without that said, anymore, the housekeeping things, everybody, you all probably know, I got this movie out, Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America, is streaming on Amazon. I wrote this book. It is America's #1 Black business history book. There's no other book as thorough, in particular with an emphasis on the rise of Black business in America, as this book is. I got a children's book out now, similar to that book. It's 30 Rich Black People who lived in the 1800s. I have 2 wall calendars. I'm waiting on them to come back from the printer. One is titled They Did It, 12 Rich Black People in the 1800s. The other is titled Do Your Best, Be Your Best. It's quotes by famous Black people. So I give you Black history, and as you know me say it, I coined it good Black history, 365 days a year. All right. So let's get started, man. Come on. Tell us your name and tell us a little bit of what you want to talk about.
Well, my name is Chester Higgins, and I'm a photographer. I see myself as a cultural anthropologist with a camera, and I spent the last 5 decades up and down the River Nile looking at a history that has been hidden from us, that we had no idea existed. And that's what I want to bring back to people today, is this knowledge. And I think you title your thing, your talk tonight, Egypt's Mystery. Now, I must tell you that I grew up in a small town in Alabama, in the Baptist church. In fact, at age 9, I had a near-death experience that my grandfather interpreted as a calling to the ministry. And from 9 till I went to Tuskegee at 18, I was a minister. And in the Baptist church, in all our Bibles, Egypt gets a very bad rap. Egypt is the place that was horrible to the victims, who were called the Jews, the people, children of Moses. The people of Egypt were demonized and cursed as Ham. So therefore, My feeling about Egypt was never really something that I embraced, or that I think any Black person embraces, because they were against the Jews, the Israelites. So in 1973, as a photographer, I had a job opportunity from an airline that no longer exists called TWA to go to Egypt and photograph to make a travel brochure. And when I got to Egypt, after getting over the fact that the pyramid looms about 10 miles out in the desert and is 35 stories high, and it commands your view from the city, then I started going to, I made my way into the temples. And when I got to the temples, the huge columns that we had been taught by, miseducated to believe that columns was something that Greeks and Romans invented. And I'm looking at these huge columns, bigger than the columns of Greece and Rome, that were Egyptian and that were made thousands of years before the Romans and Greek ever thought about doing it. But what was on the column was more impressive. And that was the images of Black people worshiping, Black people in service, Black people using water for purification, like we use baptismal, Black people using incense for purification, and kneeling. And here was a shot that I saw, because I say shot, because the Egyptians chiseled everything into pictures, into so many mediums, in paper, in paintings, but also in stone. And when I saw in stone shots of their rulers kneeling down to their God, and then I find, and with the, you will see the Holy Trinity. We will see the man, you will see the child, but you also saw the woman, which we don't have in the Bible. So when I began to look at this, I also found out that the name of their God, because we had also been told that, well, these African people, they had many different gods. They were polygamous, what, and pagan, horrible Christian terms to describe us. And then I started investigating it while I was there. And I said, well, are there many gods? And they said, well, there are many managers for God, but there's only one God. And I said, well, does this God have a name? Because we just said God. They said, yes, it does. And the name of God, in the name of the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Africans, before slavery, before Genesis, will surprise you as it surprised me. Because the name came out to be a four-letter word. And the four letters, I want you to write this down, get ready with your pen and paper or your computer. But the first letter is A. The second letter is M. The third letter is E. And the fourth letter is N, as in Nancy. And what does that spell?
Amen.
That spells amen.
Amen. That's right.
That's the name of the Egyptian god that, had Moses been in Egypt, that's the name of the Egyptian god that he would have recognized. So even though this, how and it told me that there's, from that there's been a lot of editing going on between the time of Egypt and now, that there's been a lot of denial going on between the time of Egypt and now. A lot of misunderstanding been going on that we had no idea that was intentional. But what has happened is that no matter what language, I found out that, no, after the Egyptians, the religion of divine nature bifurcated into what we call patriarch religion. And the foundation of patriarch religion is the five books of Moses, which then was broadened out for the Old Testament. But the Jews only worship five books. And then later came, but the New Testament, and then later still came Islam. But all of them say this one word, amen. The Jews say amen. The Christians say amen. The Muslims say amen. They don't know why they say it. It's not just the one word is not translated. Amen is the word that the Egyptian vocabulary for the creator spirit that is makes sense, so that you know when you say the word amen, no matter what else you said, that's the most powerful thing you can say. And have we ever thought about why? Because it's not an English word, it's not a French word, it's not a German word, it's not an American word. And when you go back into it, you'll find out that amen, and you Google it, amen is the name that the ancient Egyptians, who were black, who were Africans, gave to this to their supreme deity. Now, we call them Egyptians, but that's not their real name. Their real name, they're from a land they call Kemet, the land of the blacks, and they're called Kemet U. But their enemies who wanted to separate this knowledge from us, they didn't want black people going around realizing that, hey, the most important civilization that lasted for thousands of years, that has the most conscious people that had ever existed, who gave us astronomy, who gave us the calendar, who gave us mathematics, who gave us pyramids, who gave us medical science. Those people were black. So they came up with a whole nother kind of way to obfuscate this. So we said, okay, let's call these people, let's break them off away from blackness. And we'll give them their own name, like a science, biology. But there's no Greekology, there's no Romanology, but there's Egyptology. And Egyptology was invented just to separate us from the memory of ourselves. And unfortunately, after the downfall of Egypt because of invading armies who wanted all of the possessions of Egypt, eventually the Greek came and they distorted the Bible, and they gave us a different kind of Bible. And they gave us a Bible that controls the black people, and a Bible essentially that is aimed and designed to help us divorce ourselves from ourselves. That's a whole nother story. We'll get there. But that's who I am. I went to a school called Tuskegee, and I worked for almost 40 years as a staff photographer for the New York Times. And this is my Sacred Now is my 8th book.
Very good in that regard. And so I guess let me ask you a question. Why Egypt? What is there something in the landscape of the country?
Egypt was put in a very ideal situation. The Almighty obviously made this happen. You know, I firmly believe the Spirit is in control of everything. First of all, Egypt is at the end of a river that starts in Ethiopia. The river Nile is about 4,000 miles long. The Nile is the only river that goes north. And the reason it goes north is when it comes out of Africa, it comes out of a mountain. And it comes out of a mountain that's 6,000 feet above sea level. It took me decades to figure this out. And that water drops for hundreds of miles out of Ethiopia into Sudan, into Egypt, before it finally gets to the Mediterranean. So in the ancient time, this water brought the yearly flood waters, the yearly mud out of Ethiopia, because Egypt was a big swamp, and you still have a swamp there in the delta. That delta at one time was just nothing but Mediterranean Ocean. It was the annual flood, the annual inundation that will come down and bring the soil from Ethiopia that made it land, that made the land that you have there now. And that land kept collecting until 1955, from thousands of years earlier to 1955. Why do I say 55? Because in 1955, the British, who had taken over Egypt and Sudan, decided to build a dam to make electricity. But in building a dam, they let the water pass, but they had to hold back the mud in the soil. So they had to build the dam high enough so that the soil that collected at the bottom, the mud that collected at the bottom, would not interfere with the turbines near the top. So you have this dam that created a huge reservoir. And then that reservoir was extended by NASA when they built what's called a high dam. So now you have a reservoir that's about 1,000 miles long and about 20 stories deep. All of it water that had come down out of Africa. 85% of it comes down out of Ethiopia. 15% of it comes down what's called the White Nile out of Rwanda, beginning in Rwanda, Congo, a rain basin, and that empties into Lake Victoria, and then that goes into Sudan, into Egypt. So the Creator made this land special, and you can only get there by following the water. It's a desert. And as the desert is hemmed in on either side by huge mountains. So you can't really get there. One thing that kept them safe for thousands of years was their geography, because you really couldn't survive coming from the Red Sea or from Libya to get into Egypt, because you wouldn't have enough water to carry you through. But the people made it out of Ethiopia and just walked down the river. These are ancient Egyptians, are the cousins of Ethiopians. They walked along the river, alongside the river, and that way they were able to enter the desert and live so they could be undisturbed for hundreds of years or thousands of years before outsiders knew about them, and then grew jealous, eventually grew jealous of their ability to build a fantastic society and a rich society. The Egyptians were very interesting people. What made them famous is the fact that they developed astronomy. And from astronomy, they were able to, because they essentially, obviously, being very metaphysical, say, well, where are we? You know, we humans are the only animal at night that lay on our back. And when we lay on our back, what's in front of us? The stars. Every other animal lays on the side. The human lays on his back. And when the human lays on his back, he looks up, and he or she looks up, and they see these stars. And at some point, it hits you, well, what are these stars about? And what do they have? Is there anything about them that have anything to do with us? And the Egyptians start asking those kind of questions. And that's how they developed astronomy. And from astronomy, they were able to tell, well, we live in a desert. We have to grow food. Food needs water. Desert is dry. The Creator gave them a flood once a year. And they had to say, well, okay, well, now, you know, as farmers, because they were agronomists, as farmers, water is good. We need to know when it's coming. That would help us plan. And they began to study the night sky, and they determined there was a particular star called Sirius that travels in its orbit, but at a certain time of the year, it stopped hiding behind the sun and it comes out. And they learned that when that star rises, the river will begin to rise. And the river will rise for 40 days, just woo, more water you can ever see. And that water will remain for a few months before it subsides. And when it subsides, it has all this rich soil that's come out of Ethiopia that they can put their seeds in. So you're in the biblical story about sowing seeds. Then you will go and you will sow seeds. And these seeds will come up because the desert has been made a great planting planting area that will support life. So they could grow easily 2 crops a year because of this water that the Almighty sent down to them. So they were very observant people of their environment. That's the number one quality for being a scientist, paying attention. And they were very grateful. So in this gratefulness, they then came up with a vocabulary, a spiritual or a holy vocabulary to communicate with the Creator. How can we thank the Creator for giving us this bounty? Water was great if it was not too much. And water was great if it was not too little. That's why you're having a biblical story about the 7 years of drought. If it's too little water, it's just as destructive as a slow destruction as opposed to if it's too much water. So they wanted to, and you will find now in the city of Aswan, there is on the rock that's about 40 feet, 40 or 50 feet above the level of the river, you see the ancient markings. And those markings are there because when the Nile flooded, it would reach up to the level of these different marks. And based upon the level of these different marks in Aswan, they could then determine if this flood was going to be a good flood or a dangerous flood or lack of a flood. The people were very precise. They were very smart. I'm glad to know that they are Black people. And I know that Black people, we go to these museums and we never look at Egypt because the white people keep telling us that Egypt is part of, they tell us that of the people who came from the outside and conquered Egypt. They tell us about the Persians. They tell us about the Greeks. They tell us about the Romans. They tell us about the Arabs. But they overlook, because Egypt is like an onion. Every layer is different. And you have to be able to see and ignore certain, not get distracted by certain layers to get down to the fundamental root. And the fundamental root is Black Africa. And when you see the sculpture and the things that our people made that they left behind, I say they made it, and I get two different interesting things from it. First of all, when I look at these people, I realize that, hey, there's something different about them. They don't look like, I mean, they're people, but they seem to be in a happiness place, a happy place that we just don't know anything about. They seem to have a freedom about them that we have never experienced. They seem to have a sense of self, a sense of confidence that no human that we know has. And as I begin to study more, I realize that one of the things about them is that they all of these people are, first of all, if you see a tomb or something that comes out of a tomb, that's from a rich person. Poor people did not have the money to have tombs. That's a rich person. When you look at these rich people, you see a sense of comfortableness with themselves, a comfortableness with their environment and with nature that we have not been exposed to in our cultures. It's a confidence, but it's a confidence without. What I learned is the most important thing. It's a confidence without ego. That's when you break the ceiling for consciousness, when you don't have ego about it. And if you look at the people who came in and who conquered them, who stole from them, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the first thing you notice about them is nothing but ego.
Mhm.
Ego and stupid.
I love it.
I
Let me
suppose.
let me ask you this, and you alluded to it first. I got two main questions, and we'll go from there. You alluded to it first. What is religion? How does somebody say we got to have religion?
Well, that's a very good question. What is religion? The beginning of religion in ancient Egypt was an acknowledgement of nature and that we are a part, that whatever this is that created us, humans can't do it. We cannot make air. We cannot make sunshine. We cannot make the moon. We cannot make water. We cannot make the living fish in the water. We cannot make four legged creatures. We cannot make plants. We cannot make trees. We cannot make the desert. We cannot make the mountain. Something greater than us did that. Religion by the Egyptians is an acknowledgement that you are part of something big and that all of you are one. It is it and you are it. God, nature rather, is the body of God. And they figured out in their mind that They were grateful that whatever God is, that it included them as humans. And God gave them a calendar, gave them a sense of continuity, because the sun will rise and set every day, and they were still here. Could you imagine the first humans when the sun went down? The fear of, oh my God, what's going on? I mean, is this going to end? I mean, will I be here when this darkness lifts? So they said, look, this is an act of the Creator, and we are part of creation, and we are very grateful for that. And they created a language, a theological language, to acknowledge the God of the sun, the God force in the air, the God force of the water, the God force of land, the God force of all living things, and to find a way to to be not only at peace with that, but to revel in the happiness of that. So religion has since become many other things. The European has used religion as a tool to control and pacify. Because when they came to Egypt, every European writer, Theodorus or Herodotus, who came to Egypt in the 3rd century BC, one of the things that they keep saying is that, wow, these people are just super religious, super duper duper religious. And in time, their conquerors, the Greek, realized that, wow, this worship of nature has been a force among the Egyptians, the Africans, to make a society. Because what the Africans thought is that, look, God, Amen, has created a perfect world around us. And at night, when we look at the stars, a perfect world in front of us. You don't see stars clanging into each other. So they thought, well, can we replicate, can we mirror what Amen, God has done in the heavens? Can we mirror that on earth? And that's probably, for them, was their formula for creating a human society. Can we maintain the peace among us that Amen has legislated in the stars and maintained their peace? So religions was based, the Africans used religion as a way to bring peace, to maintain peace within the society. Because with peace, good things can happen. In wars, nothing good can happen because it's all about destruction. So the Greeks understood eventually what was going on, but then they thought, since they were outsiders and they were wanting to conquer these people, they decided, these people are very spiritual by nature. Maybe we can use their spirituality against them. And we're going to create something else. We're going to create a religion that causes them to divorce themselves from nature and become aligned to us, to one human being who is white. Now, we didn't realize at the time what was going on, because at the first generation, second generation, you kind of, if you put yourself in the feet of our ancestors, um, saw it as a change, but it was not a permanent change. The Jewish people did the same thing. They changed up from the nature system. But it's only as when it becomes a habit, generation after generation, does it become normalized, and you forget what the original departure was all about. And we have suffered from that departure because the people who are our enemies studied us very well. And they determined by studying us very well that we have a sensitivity to the relationship of the spirit that nobody else has. Southern hemispheric people have this sensitivity that northern hemispheric people just do not have. They don't care about. But they realize that they can use that against us to maintain control over us. And that's what they did by creating their Bible and as a means of pacification. And that Bible started out with the Portuguese, and they ended the 1400s when they first used it to pacify and take Africans from Africa to Brazil. And it continued until the English got involved. But the English decided, hey, look, why are we disguising this? We know what this is. So you'll see the King James Version, the original King James Version has on it that the missionaries took with them. It has written the Slave Bible. And
Mm,
if you Google it, the Slave Bible, don't be surprised what you're going to find. This
mm,
is what was introduced to our ancestors way back when. So
mm.
it became over time the traditional thing. And our ancestors, because their parents followed it, their children followed it, and their grandchildren followed it.
Sure.
None of them knowing at that point they could drop off the slave Bible name. And to keep everybody else just wallowing in their ignorance. Go out there, do your
Mm.
spirit thing, but just use my 52 passages in the Bible that says slavery is good.
Right, right. Oh man.
Come on, man. What kind of God would tell you that slavery is good?
Yeah, you on point. Let me ask you this about this mystery. What is the mystery of the pyramids? Why did they build pyramids? What are pyramids? You alluded earlier that they are about 10 miles away from the city. Why did
In
they build
Egypt,
them where they are?
in,
What's that
in,
story?
in Egypt, the landscape was littered with pyramids. The biggest ones are the ones left behind in Giza. And the only reason that they're not in England is because they're too big to steal. But the pyramids, we have to talk about nature. The people believed in the holistic unity of nature. And they looked and said, what's the most powerful force in nature? You have earth, wind, fire, those things. But what is the most powerful force above all of that here on this planet? And that is what's above you. God has to be above you. The strongest force in nature is above you. And what's above you that heats you up every day? The sun.
That's right.
So, and they believe that Amen, the invisible, has an apartment on the sun. So when they worshiped the sun, they weren't worshiping the solar disk as much as they were worshiping the resonance, a window on the resonance of Amen. So now let's take this a little further. After thousands of years, they said, look, we are very righteous, holy people, and we worship Amen. We want to enjoy the blessings of Amen every day. He heats us up, he gives us energy, he wakes us up, he calls the plants to grow, blah, blah, blah. But we're kind of possessive. We like to have Amen down with us. Can we bring Amen down from heaven? So the brilliant idea came up. Well, let's make something that reflects Amen on earth. So you have to have then a reflector building that's slanted. So when Amen makes his voyage across, no matter where it is, it's lighting up one of these panels of this building, the
Mm.
pyramid. So the pyramid then said, well, then how else do we formulate this? And then they formulate the pyramid. So if you take two sides of it and you put it upside down, you get the Star of David, which is the whole concept of so above, so below. But then you get the whole thing about the dimensions of reality, physical reality on one side, mental reality on another side. Physical reality is on the bottom, mental reality is on one side, and then emotional reality is on the other side. And you put all these together and you come up with 3, 6, 9, 12. 12 also, it becomes a holy number because the year is divided into 12 astrological signs, 12 months, the
Mhm.
12 sides of nature. So these pyramids were, because the look of the pyramid now, you don't get the whole picture, and I'll tell you why. Up until the 6th century, the pyramids were originally built with white limestone casing. 7th century, the Arabs who conquered went to the pyramids and turned them into a quarry to build their white limestone buildings in Cairo. So if you can imagine this building, 35 stories high, sheer white, skirted, exterior, huge reflector of the sun. What a lighthouse that is on the desert. The Egyptians believed in pyramids to be at their grave site, to be in the middle of their civic centers, to be next to their major temples. And I say one of the reasons why I doubt that the biblical Hebrews ever lived in Egypt, because you can go through the book of Moses and not once do they mention that pyramids existed.
Mm. What's inside a pyramid?
Usually nothing, but there are chambers. In the Great Pyramids in Giza, there are two chambers. One they call the Queen Chamber, one they call the King Chamber. These chambers, the Queen Chamber is sort of small. It may be about 30 feet square. The King's Chamber is really large. Not only is that chamber 5 stories high, but the chamber is also 50 feet by maybe 150 feet long with a flat top. Here you have a building that's made of nothing but stone. And inside that building, there is a huge room, and the roof is flat. And it's been there for since 2500 BCE, and the roof has not fallen. How do
Mm.
you, what kind of technology, what kind of architecture you do to make that happen? Well, we've since found out how it's done. But, that was like astounding that somebody could think of this. Now, white people are quick to say that aliens built this. Whatever black folks have done that white people cannot explain, they always say aliens did it.
So back in the day, where the pyramids were, was that the downtown of the city, that
The
kind of
central,
thing?
it would have been the central part of the city because the major temples would have been around there. But you also had something else. You had the major burial grounds. So you had the burial grounds for the king and the his sisters and brothers, and for the managers, the mayor of the city, the governor of the city. Those people would be buried in their own tombs near the pyramid because they felt that that was the holiest place that they could be in and around. So if you want to, and the Egyptians were the first people to develop the concept of life after death,
Mm.
which is why, and it became it grabbed the mind and of the imagination of the Egyptian people in that being them spiritual selves, and they adored that particular concept, and they called it. They gave it the concept a author, and the author of that concept is a woman, a black woman, that the Greek called Isis, but they call Ast.
Mm.
And the reason this is she invented the concept of life after death is because her husband was killed by her jealous brother. I don't know, you may have recall something like that happening in the Bible with a jealous brother.
Okay.
And this jealous brother, Seth, killed this brother Asar. And Isis wailing, and not only did he kill him, but he was so intent of getting rid of this brother that he then dismembered his body. He cut him up into 14 pieces.
Mm.
So Isis, who was away at the time, came back and she appealed to the heavens to send her an angel to help her find these chopped up pieces so that
Mm.
she could give him a decent burial. With the help of this angel called Thoth, she found these 13 pieces because the 14th was his penis, which was thrown into the Nile River, and they said eaten by electric uh, uh, fish. With those 13 pieces, she then reassembled it like a jigsaw puzzle, his body, and wrapped it, carried it, and she developed, by doing so, she made the first mummy. And then she did something that was really incredible that gave that mummy life. She then became a figure of the spirit. She became a bird and she fluttered over the dead body. And in her fluttering, she was able to take the seed of a dead man that no longer had a penis. And she became pregnant with it. That is what's called the first ever in the world impossible conception
Mm.
without a man. That's what impossible conception is. She
Yeah.
was the first to do it.
Mm.
He was the first to bring the idea to humankind that it was something. So then the Egyptians repeated this paradigm. Each pharaoh, each what is a man or woman, they always have a story harking back to the time when their mother was approached one night by Amun in the disguise of her husband, and then Amun would drop the dew of life and the breath of life into the mother, and that holy child will be set to grow up.
Mm.
So this story of the impossible birth is why, after the Romans conquered Egypt, the last thing the Egyptian religion had spread all over the Mediterranean. And this was the last idea of the Egyptians, their religion, that was stamped that to be stamped out. And they couldn't stamp it out completely. So they then what they do? It got transferred into the Mary story, the impossible birth, the impossible conception.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
That story is an African story. They
Oh,
got they got reworked, but so
okay. I see what you're
it's an
saying.
incredible story. I mean, everybody falls under the imagination of that story.
Yes,
It's
yes.
an African story that then morphed into Christianity, and then even the Islamic, it morphs into Islam.
Oh.
It's it's too,
Let
it's too
me ask you
powerful.
this. What's in a pyramid? I mean, is it you mentioned the two rooms? Is it do they have light in there now for people who
You have
want
light.
to
You
do
get
these there?
if you're not claustrophobic, because you can't just walk into the tomb. You have to go through tunnels to get to the tomb. You have to go through there's even one area they call the Grand Gallery has an incline of about 70 degrees and it's 5 stories high and it's a corbel ceiling that comes in at the top to get to the king's tomb. So if you're not claustrophobic, it takes time to get there, to walk into this through this 200 foot no, it's probably 400 feet that you have to go through this chamber. But it's worth the walk. I've even gone through chambers above the king's tomb to see the relievings, what they call the relieving chambers, how they managed to keep the uh, the pyramid from falling in on itself. And
Tell
those
me
chambers were, and those, I just want to say, those chambers was just the height of a person. And one of them was about 4 feet, and you pray to God that there's no earthquake that causes this to fall
yeah,
while you're in
right,
it.
right. So you're
So,
crawling when you go through there almost.
well, only when you're going above the king's chamber
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
have to have special permission to do that,
yeah,
which I had because I was with a television crew doing it.
yeah.
But you going through being in there, period. You hear nothing from the outside. Everything is silent. You are in the belly, the heart of the pyramid. You can hear nothing. So, and you're surrounded by stone. And I think everybody who goes in there have some trepidation when they realize I'm a long way from where I came into this place, 400 feet back, and I'm not up to where I'm going yet. God forbid this thing falls in on itself. Because
Yeah,
I'll be nothing but a pancake, and people will
yeah,
never know for thousands of years that my pancake is here.
yeah. Okay, I want to stay on that
So,
just a little bit longer.
but what's
So,
in the pyramid,
yeah,
we don't know. We don't know. But they say that they were built for tombs, and in the Great Pyramid there is a sarcophagus where a body could have been laid. This is the size of a smaller person that could have been laid out. Then if but we don't know. But what we do know is that in the tombs of the Theban kings, because we discovered 100 years ago an intact tomb of King Tut, that the tomb is packed with riches and furniture that's gold laden, shrines that are gold laden. You have shrines that are gold laden around the body because the body is holy. The whole idea of the holy pope came from the holy Egyptian kings who later
Mm,
became known as pharaohs. They were holy people. So
mm.
that people put them in and gave them a holy send off. So they surrounded them with what they thought was the skin of a god was gold. So you have in King's Tutsu, you had over 300 pounds of gold. Now all you have to do is figure that out for the day's cost, and you get into hundreds of millions of dollars because if you calculate over 320 pounds of gold into ounces, and then go figure out on Google what's the value of an ounce of gold today,
Right.
then
Yeah.
then
Sure.
value and multiply that 1 ounce times 16 to get a pound times a pound, and then you get to your figure what that value of gold is. But most of these tombs were robbed by the people who invaded them. So you have the first invaders were the Persians, because the Egyptians lived in a free society and they built tombs along the cliffs, along the mountains, and you could see tomb entrances. People could go to the tombs the way we go to a cemetery, and they could lay a wreath. They could lay something in order to kiss the memory of that person, so that it didn't take much to find out that when it became a lawless society, that the invaders they just say, okay, that's a tomb there, there's one there, let's go knock it down and get in and get all the stuff. And that's what happened.
Oh, are the only pyramid? Is Egypt only the place where there are pyramids? Are there pyramids any place else in the world?
Yes, in Sudan. Egypt has about 190 something pyramids. Sudan has about 400, almost 500 pyramids, but they're different. They're made different. The Egyptian pyramids are what we call the perfect triangular pyramids, the 45-degree pyramid. The Sudanese, the Nubians made pyramids, but they were the 60-degree pyramid, steeper, and they were shorter. So the highest Sudanese pyramid would probably be 15 stories, where the highest Egyptian pyramid is 35 stories. So next time you're in a building, and if you're on the 35th floor, just look out the window. That's what you see if you're at the top of the Great Pyramid of Egypt.
Mm.
Now, there's also another difference. The Egyptians had tombs made into the pyramid because they had solved this problem of keeping the pyramid from falling in on itself. The Sudanese and the Nubians dug their tombs out underneath first, and then they built the pyramid on top of it.
Hmm. What? Just one, two more, and I see we have a visitor of my buddy Keith. One or two more. If this is a question. I know 35 stories is tall. So can you give me an idea of how wide that is? Is this like as wide as maybe what the Empire State Building might be 35 stories or something like that?
It's wide as two football fields put together.
Okay. Which leads to this question. How big is Egypt?
I
And
mean,
how big is
I'm
this?
talking base wide
Yeah,
base.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
How big is Egypt to have 100 of those? Is Egypt as big as the country of America or three or
No,
four
it's not.
states?
No, it's not big. It's several states put together.
Okay.
Egypt would probably be uh it would probably be Pennsylvania to the Carolinas.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. It's a huge country, and Sudan is even twice as big.
Oh, really? Oh,
You
okay.
know, the country of Africa will fit America, North and South. It would fit Europe, including Russia, and it would fit China into the continent of Africa. That's how big Africa is.
Oh, really?
That's how big the looting pot is for everybody to come and loot out of Africa. And because our people are spiritual and very happy with ourselves, we really were unprepared to defend ourselves against these people who came with superior weapons and might uh, to uh, to rob us and to loot us.
Oh man. Okay. Brother Keith, I see you. Do you have a question? Unmute yourself if you do.
Hey Keith, mute yourself. I don't hear you.
Yeah.
I still can't hear you.
Yeah. It's at the bottom.
Okay.
There you
Oh,
go.
that's good. Okay.
All right. I didn't know y'all couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
I was just kind of listening. It's very interesting that you guys are talking about pyramids. I guess some of my input is, and I apologize for joining you guys late, but it's a lot of people who in 2024 think that aliens build pyramids. Do you guys have any input on?
Yeah, what I was
anything like
saying
that?
earlier is that when white people can't figure out how the genius of black folks, they didn't say
Well,
aliens,
no,
did it?
wait, hold on. Most of the people who I run into are black. I've never heard any white people have that dispute. All black.
That doesn't matter. That's what well, where do you get your information? You and I are both black, but we live in a white world.
We
We
live in the
watch
right.
Discovery Channel. We read our books. What do we get our
Right.
information from? We get it from
Right.
white people. What do we get our schooling from? We don't get it from us. We get it from white people. So, so yeah, that particular mind who heard that or read that happens to be the color of black, but we all live in a white world that we get our information from. But while we're on this topic, there are many different theories about the pyramids. The white theory that was predominant for almost 100 years is that was a huge ramp made. Well, if you calculate these ramps would have to be several miles long to get you to the top. So then they went back and they said, well, Herodotus, who we've discredited as being not the father of history, but the father of lies, said that he was told, he didn't see it because it's hundreds of 1,000 years before his time, that the Egyptians used some sort of a crane that will lift blocks from one level to another. That was a theory for a while. But the other thing is interesting is this. The Egyptians moved stone when the floods came. That's how they got the obelisk, because their quarries are downstream near Aswan. Today, if you go to Egypt, there's a huge, humongous obelisk that was almost taken out, but it cracked and it's left there in place. And you'll see then how big and how heavy a piece of stone they were capable of moving. Downhill to the water, to put on floats to take it to 200 miles north to Luxor or Memphis, which is the capital, or Alexandria. Now, so this guy who was who dealt in hydraulics came up with a very interesting theory that makes the most sense to me I've ever heard. And he says, look, the blocks are all cut, all shipped down in the water, and because you can only do it during the flood when the water rose about 10 stories. And that what you did with each block is that you surrounded it with wood so it would float. And all this blocks of stone was sent downstream so that you can build these pyramids. I mean, you're in a desert. You don't have, even if you had wheels, you cannot carry this kind of stone and on land in the sand. So the Egyptians were very, very well attuned to water and the use of water as a force. So this guy said, hey, look, I think that what's happening here to get the stones up is you got to have some hydraulic system. And he came up with an interesting way of showing this, that the Egyptians were able to make a sealed container of water that will be filled from the top of the pyramid to the bottom, and you would have sluices in between, and you would let that same stone that came and floated in the water, that was floating on wood, light wood, papyrus, whatever, you put it in the chute, and you let it go up to the first level, Take that away, let it go up to the second level. Take that away, let it go and close it back and let it go to the third level. And he proved this with actual stones, smaller stones, that they understood hydraulics, water hydraulics, that's their life. And if you build a hydraulic system, it works, it lifts.
Now, can I interject for a minute there?
Please.
What you explained to me is the knowledge that human beings possessed. They were mathematical geniuses. For some strange reason, there's a lot of people who think that the people at that time were so far back in that time that they were stupid. They couldn't have possibly figured anything out. They can't figure things out. They're stupid. That's why aliens had to be the ones who came out here to do this. That's how people, I don't know if you talk to people on a daily basis, but that's how the general perception is to me when I hear almost every single person talk until I talk to you or somebody who's more, trying to get into what really goes on in life, a study, somebody who reads books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a person your general person,
yeah,
they're on some strange conspiracy theory.
Right.
And if you try to tell them what you just said, they look at you like you crazy. Like,
well,
really, people actually have brains back then, and they were actually thinking. They were mathematicians. Like I just left Rome, and they have a whole lot of sculptures out there, and people look at those sculptures like, "Oh my God, this couldn't have possibly been something that people thought." You had to be something from another galaxy in order to build this.
Right.
And I'm thinking, no.
Well, when people
just like you just said, wait a minute, just like you just said, they started with little rocks. Like they started with little sculptures. And they made them bigger and bigger and bigger. This is not nothing that's magnificent. This is, I play music. People look at me like, wow, Keith, you can do all these. This is nothing to me. It's almost like just talking.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if you don't do it, you give these people who do it these great powers, alien powers, something beyond this earth. It's even so far as it's like a God. God did this. It ain't even a man who did it. God must have put these things here. That's how far human beings think.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any book knowledge, you give all these things that we see greater meaning than they actually are.
Right. Well, I got to stop you there because
I have to say this: the genius of the mind can be quite terrifying.
Yeah. I got to stop us there only because we do go to 6. We try to keep it to the hour.
Okay.
We're every Monday.
Well, now, Keith, tell Keith he got to get my book.
He got to get his book. And that's what we're going to say.
You got to get this book, sacrednow.com.
Yeah.
I spent 5 decades.
Chester Higgins, hold on. Just let me,
You just Google Chester Higgins or Google Sacred Now. Jump on it. Jump on it.
All right.
Sacrednow.com. It'll be in the description. It'll be in the description. And then, Brother Higgins, we're going to have you come back again. because
my pleasure, because,
we got love for you.
Our people need to know these things. They need to know something about because they've been misinformed.
Yeah.
And, and I'm glad that God has given me life to go and experience these and be a witness for these things so I can share it because we all need to know that, hey, wow, our people are a lot more incredible than what our enemy tell us that we are.
That's right. That's going to be the final word because of the hour. I hate to say that. We'll do it again.
I joined you guys so late. I apologize.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
all right, my brother.
Yeah. And so everybody, all this will be in the description. This show is taped. And so it will be on Strong Inspirations. You can watch it from the beginning. It will air and then be up on permanently, probably within the next 2 days. So just, I tell you what to do. Subscribe to Strong Inspirations and then hit the notification bell so that you get notified when new video, new content is on the show. And go to his website. All that's there. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net. I'm not sure of who next Monday's lead artist, lead a person will be, but that will be notified in the next 2 days on Strong Inspirations. But don't worry about it. Just come. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from 7 to 8 o'clock every Monday, we do this. And to you, my brother, I say this as I have said before. I want you to continue to stay strong, stay on your grind. I love who you are. I'm coming to your town. I got to shake your hand and let some of that flow into me so I can circumvent the 50 years, because I don't know if I got that much time left.
And I'll be positive.
Yeah, got to think positive. Yes.
Think positive.
And with that, I'll say bye-bye. We're out, everybody. Peace.
Okay. Okay, my brother. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.